Hey team, this week we talked to Dr. Joe Brown.
Jo is a low-key legend, a Kiwi who has reached the top of her field on the global stage.
She's been the physiotherapist and performance coach for some of the biggest sports names on the planet, including Noah Lyles, NBA players, professional football players, Australian Olympic teams, and even the Jamaican bobsled team, Cool Runnings too.
One thing that was consistent with the track and field stars she worked with is that Jo was the last person everyone wanted to see before they went out on the track. Not the coach, not their partner, not the psychologist. She has this gift where she holds space, has their back, and instills belief in people. Jo lost her sister a few years ago when her sister was trying to save her own children at a beach in Hawke's Bay. The children survived, but Jo's sister tragically drowned, and we address how she got through her most difficult moments.
She's also recently released a book called See Your Elephant. It goes deep into the blind spots, limiting beliefs, and handbrakes that hold people back in their life.
This was an awesome one. The episode is brought to you by TAB. Download the new app today and get your bet on.
Dr. Joe Brown, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You probably think we've brought you in to talk about your life and career, but I actually need you to sort out my hips and hamstrings.
As if you've hijacked the start of the podcast.
But it's like you don't go to like a barbecue and ask your accountant to do your taxes, right? But
he does. He does that as well. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, whatever your area of specialty is. No, we'll build into the hips and hamstrings, but there is issues there.
I can see by the way you walk.
Yeah, I've heard you're very observant.
Am I okay? Is everything okay with other than the weight that I'm carrying? Is everything okay with my situation?
You're putting me in a really awkward spot.
Okay, all right.
We're not talking BMIs right now.
No. But you're glad you're doing it this year, not last year, because you would have been mortified. But anyway, here we are.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right. No, we are very excited to have you in for this one. It's the second time we've had a guest fly internationally to come and join us. The first one was Lauren Roberts, which was a super special conversation. I feel like this one is going to be the same. I guess it's an interesting byproduct of your success doing media and podcasts and things like this. Do you enjoy this side of things?
I really love getting on podcasts. I think that's obviously where media is going, and it's the type of media that you get to choose. So when you choose to listen to a podcast, you turn it on, you listen to it with intent, like you're normally searching to get something out of it. And I feel when people listen to podcasts, they actually are searching for answers and actually taking on the information rather than processing information in other types of media like, your news or even some of the written content. So I feel when I get on podcasts, it's a really great opportunity to share my knowledge, experience, and really, have an impact on people's lives. Yeah,
it is. It's such an engaged audience. And with a story like yours, you need the length to get into it. There's a lot of people we've spoken to who are really excited for you to share your story with us. There's a common theme that you're underappreciated. And that's coming from some of the biggest athletes on the planet. I've got some amazing voice notes that we might put at the end. But does profile matter to you? Does it matter if people know who you are?
It doesn't really matter if people know who I am as long as I can still make my impact. But I also are really driven by making my biggest difference. So I always have this mantra, go where I can make my biggest difference, whether that's here in New Zealand, in Jamaica, South Africa, the back blocks of South Australia, it's going where I can make my biggest difference, and that's changing all the time. And, I spent the last 3 years almost completely dedicated to Noah Lyles and his dream to win a gold medal at the Olympics. And I gave up a lot for that to make happen, but I could make my biggest difference with him at that time. Is that going to be my place for the next 4 years, the next Olympic cycle? Probably not, because I think I've made my biggest difference with him.
It's a strong start out of the blocks, dropping Noah Lyles as a name. No, this is fantastic because it sets the scene. But I just want
He didn't have a strong start when I started with him.
We're going to find that out a little bit later on. But to Stephen's point, you've flown internationally in for this. So what is an average? Is there such a thing as an average week for you? What does that actually look like, your day to day?
I really don't have an average week. It changes day to day, like week to week, month to month. So I quite often don't know my schedule the following week, the following month. So literally last week, I think it was like, yeah, we can make this happen this week. Yeah, sure, I can do that. But then next Thursday, I'm going to plane to Texas, and then I'm back, I think, for a week, and then at a conference in Christchurch, then back to Jamaica, and it's changing all the time. And a lot of my clients will call me up to be that impact person, so get on a plane and make a difference. And none of them are here in Australia or New Zealand. They're all in Jamaica or the US or something. So it's a 24-hour flight to get there, but that's the kind of work I do.
And like, how much international travel out of 365 are you away from home base is Australia?
We shouldn't really add up the numbers because my husband might get a little bit more stressed than he already is.
Let's sliding scale.
Look, in the last 3 years, I've probably spent up to 8 months of the year away.
You must have some incredible travel hacks, which we won't go into here, but there'll be some interesting ones.
Yeah, some horrible travel stories as well.
I bet some airports will be some interesting spots.
Our research suggests that calling your physio would be a disservice. We've heard you described as the glue or a cheat code by some of your athletes. And I'm going to read what your colleague Joey said about you. He said, "She's recognised by those in the know, but there's so many that don't know about her because she hasn't focused on trying to market herself or try to sell, because the results sell themselves. But she's an Olympic gold medal winning physiotherapist who looks after NBA players, who fixes the unfixable and brings the broken back to the elite level. She can write a gym program. She was a high level athlete when she was younger. She can coach. She's got an eye for detail. She's got qualifications. She's got the understanding of psychology. She's got 25 years experience. She's got the PhD. She's worked with the best athletes in the world. She's rehabilitated every different injury under the sun. One thing that was consistent with the track and field stars she worked with is that Jo was the last person everyone wanted to see before they went out on track. Not the coach, not their partner, not the psychologist. She has this gift where she holds space, has their back, and instills belief in people. In fact, when people are like, "Oh, do you reckon I should go see Jo Brown?" I say, "Mate, if she can't fix your injury, I'll give you $1,000. And at this point in time, it's the truth. She's running at 100%. So that's the start of the framing of Jo Brown. But is that true? Is there anyone whose injury you can't fix?
This is a loaded question.
Wow. Like, there's certain things that you're never going to 100% fix, but there's normally a way that you can change the way someone moves or the way they load their body in order to maximize their functionality. So there's certain things that can't be fixed necessarily. So you could get a scan and they're not going to be any better on the scan, but functionally they're doing a whole lot better. And I always say treat the man, not the scan anyway. So we don't we have to take the scan into account.
Yeah, Joey said that. What does that really mean?
So many people will go and get an MRI of their back, right? And you can see, like, all of us sitting in this room where none of us...
Maybe we focus on... Let's focus our attention in one way.
Focus on hip guy. So we could
and
scan...
hamstrings. Don't forget hamstrings.
And hamstring guy. Hip and hamstring guy. And, we could scan your back and there could be bulging discs everywhere. But are those bulging discs actually related at all to your pain, or are they just incidental? And so many times a lot of therapists globally will get a scan and treat the scan, not the human in front of them, whereas I'm all about treating the human and what are their needs. And I start with performance. So say you're an NBA player and you come to me and you're broken down.
We're not talking about you anymore.
Just so you know.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying that.
So you're a dad of 4. Sorry. Carry on.
Yeah, so you're an NBA player, you come to me and you're broken down. What I want to do in order to be able to get you back to full performance, I start at looking at your best performance. So what do you look like at your best? What are your gifts? How are you moving? What is it that got you where you are today, and how do I get you back? Because if I don't know what your greatness is, how can I get you back there? Whereas so many people focus in and go right in on what that scan says and what the presenting problem is without having one eye on that bigger picture and focusing on performance.
It makes so much sense, right? Like it seems like what everyone should do, but I guess they're not.
No.
Okay, continuing the intro, we went to Megan Tapper, who is an Olympic bronze medal hurdler, and I'm going to play the voice note she said at the end of this episode because it's so good, but I'm just going to kind of summarize. She said, Meeting Dr. Jo was one of the biggest blessings of my life. Not only has she been a shoulder to cry on, she's been an encyclopedia of advice and an amazing friend. She's just a 1 in a million human. I actually call her the prodigy. She thinks I'm joking, but I'm actually very serious. And for some reason, I don't feel like she's appreciated the way she should be, even by me. I know what Dr. Jo is capable of because I've seen her work since 2018. She was years ahead of every single sport medical practitioner that I've ever worked with, and I've worked with a lot across the globe. Having someone like Dr. Jo in your corner, it's going to just double your chances of anything. That goal, you're already halfway there with Dr. Jo in your corner. I promise you. That was part of it. Like, it was such a cool message. And I think these two things sort of represent, a lot of the comms we've had from all the people we've contacted. But just on Megan, like, there's a cool passage in your book where you spoke about sort of screaming into your laptop when she's winning her medal. Because those were the COVID games, right? And you'd done all this work with her. And then, like, what was that experience like?
Yeah, so we'd been on a bit of a journey together since 2018. And Megan's kind of one of those athletes that she won't necessarily ask for help. So she's very humble and doesn't, want to bother you type of thing. And her husband at the time was helping coach her, and he'd called me in the lead up to the Olympics and said she's really sore, but she doesn't want to, bother you. And now that you can't get to the games because it's COVID games, she felt bad. And I was like, no, get her to call me. So we did a call and I got her moving on some exercises and things. And this is all on a video call, obviously. And then she got to the games and I didn't hear from her for a few days. And I knew when I didn't hear from her that something was up. But I didn't want to also bother her in case she was just in the zone. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to let it ride. And then I got a call from her husband again and said, look, she's not in a good place. And he's like, will you call her? And I'm like, of course. So she's literally in the village in Tokyo and she's just an absolute mess. And mentally not trusting the people that were there to look after her body and too in pain. So it was very much a strategic reset and then give her confidence in her own body again. Literally, I'm on the floor of my office. She's on the floor of the halls of the Olympic Village, and we get her to a point that she's feeling pretty good. And I'm like, you can do this. You're good to go. Like, literally, you've got all the tools you need. You've done the work. Let's just execute. And that was, a couple of hours before the race and then she was going to go and warm up and everything. And then, so this was early in the morning here, and then I had to go into my office in Australia and work, and I just decided that I was just going to stop everything and put it on my laptop and watch. And I literally was just watching everything that I'd ever said to her, every little inch of work that we'd done, been put together for the first time ever in the way that she should have always been able to execute. And it was just such an awesome moment to just see someone that had worked so hard and just taken on all the advice. And for me, not being able to be there but still being such a part of that journey with her and knowing that she'd taken on the advice and was able to execute was a really special moment. And it still makes me like tremble inside,
We can see it. It's like it's palpable.
Yeah.
What does that actually look like? What does that actually look like that 1 minute after she's crossed the line, she got the Olympic medal, and you're,
and it was so hard because so much of what I do is with international people, right? So I'm in an office in a big, huge, like beautiful gym in Australia, and I've got work colleagues and stuff, but none of them get it. Like it's all so foreign, and what they believe high performance is and what I believe high performance and what I know high performance to be is quite a different level and understanding. And I'm kind of like buzzing around just like, oh my God, like my girl just won the bronze medal. Like, this is amazing. And everyone's just like, yeah.
Cool, Joe.
Okay, awesome. Like, what do you want us to say kind of thing? And I think that's the struggle that I've had coming back after the Olympics with Noah, and we'll talk about that later, but as well as just being able to share my experience and people understanding that level of high performance and what it takes and what the person that I've had to be able to deliver that for my athletes, and particularly over a Zoom call, so got pretty skilled at delivering a really powerful message and trust and advice over a Zoom call since COVID. Thanks, COVID.
Yeah.
Do you think you're quite uniquely placed in that regard of being someone that does have those experiences but can't reconcile them with other people in your field?
Like, there are people that I reconcile them with, but it's just hunting those people down, and they're not all in Australia, New Zealand. A lot of them are international, and I think in different parts of the world, the sport industry and what I do is quite siloed. People are put in boxes. So you're either a physio or you're a coach or you're a psychologist. And I've got, elements of all those things and trained all those things. So I'm quite unique because I have a very mixed skill set. So that I think the relatability comes sometimes from not fitting in a box. And trust me, I never want to be put in a box. And after the Olympics, I had this crazy idea that I might be able to come back to Australia and get a normal physio job. No one would hire me, and my husband's just like, babe, you just can't get back in that box. Like, whatever contortion you do and break yourself down, he's like, that's not who you are anymore. And I know that, but I needed, like, my husband, the closest person to me, to actually, like, that's not who you are anymore. You're more than that.
Because I heard a term, impact person. Is that what you used in your kind of intro earlier?
Yeah, sometimes so quite often I'm that person that's hired to come in and make an impact in a short period of time. So basically walk in and call a spade, see the BS going on, and whether that's from a physical point of view or a mental point of view, or even in a team environment where, it might be in a professional sporting team environment where there's poor communication or, something like that. So really come in and make impact in that time. I like the term human performance engineer, which I'm kind of working around a term like that or something similar. Because essentially what I do is I see your best performance, I break it down whether you're already broken down, and then build it back up again, put it back together in the best way possible.
So you've written a book, See Your Elephant, which I've read, and I really, really enjoyed it. Seeker Judgment, by the way. We can get into that. Yeah, but
I could have guessed.
Could you?
Yeah. I actually meet people now and they're like, my elephant, don't you?
That's interesting. Okay.
I haven't finished it.
We're going.
Slack.
We're going to sprinkle themes of the book sort of through the rest of the episode, but I wanted to start with what grabbed me near the start was self-awareness. And you write that research suggests that only 10 to 15% of the global population are self-aware, which kind of surprised me. I think by nature, Seamus and I are self-aware, but you kind of assume that other people are also the same. But yeah, can we talk about self-awareness and what the importance of it and why it's so real?
Yeah, I guess I went on a deep dive into self-awareness in my own personal journey, but also in really looking into and investigating how the best athletes in the world operate. And I've always questioned, what it takes to be great. Like, what is the difference between the good, the great, and the unstoppable? Like, who are these people? And I tell a story in this in my book, and I talk about being in the Australian Open, and I was lucky enough to be the first female physio to be in the men's room at the Australian Open for a time, and which is a little bit rare for the athletes, so they all acknowledged that there was a female in the room, and who are you? And I was wearing the blue shirt and not the red one, which meant I wasn't just a massage therapist. Woo. Breaking barriers anyway. And so I had the opportunity to observe guys like Federer and Nadal, who are obviously legends of sport that will, if you don't need to be a tennis fan to know that Federer and Nadal are tennis players, right? And I just looked at how they operated and quickly realised the difference that was making the difference wasn't their physicality as tennis players. Like, every guy in the top 100 are amazing physical athletes, and they all had their skills and their shots and everything. It was very much about how they did life. And what I realised is every interaction is with intent. So they are so self-aware of every human, every action, interaction, every word they say, every thought, every movement. And then I started pulling that back and thinking, okay, well, what if I start working with athletes to have intention with everything that they think and do, and what impact that will have? And when I started then analysing other athletes in other sports, people like Yohan Blake that I'd worked quite closely with, and I always remember him turning up and we were organising a time to meet, and he said, "Joe, I'll be there at 4:11. And Jamaican's normally a half an hour late, but, it was 4:11. It wasn't 4:10, it wasn't 4:15, it was 4:11. We're going to start work at 4:11. And, that was that everything with intent. There's a plan, a process, and intent with everything that you do. And so self-awareness obviously is a huge part of that. But I think the component where people often, when it comes back to that 10 to 15%, I think we either hunt down our own internal self-awareness without looking into the external component, or vice versa. So some people are really internally aware, but they have no idea how they're interacting in the world with others and how they are perceived by others and how they're choosing to be perceived by other people as well. And then coming down to influence, and I think this is a really important conversation in today's society because, we're all on social media. Well, most of us are. Whether we want to or not, it's part of life, right? But it's who we choose to influence and who we choose to be influenced by. So it's not just the podcast we want to listen to or what we want to look up on social media. It's who we're actually choosing to put stuff out to and who we're targeting. And I think when we get really clear on self-awareness, we need to include all those components, both the internal and external. So I think that that 10 to 15% is when you've got both of those locked in. So 95% of us believe that we got all this, but most of the time we're leaving that little bit out, and that's your elephant. That's that bit that you're leaving out, that bit that you're choosing to ignore, push away, not deal with.
I might have just exposed myself. I was like, yeah, I'm self-aware. Like, you think you are, but you're actually not, mate. You're actually not.
Actually, boom, boom.
But how do you become aware that you're not self-aware, and how do you improve that?
By starting to ask the question is the first step. Like, how self-aware am I? In my book, I use a self-awareness questionnaire that kind of gets you thinking about a few questions that will guide you in the right direction. But I think it's a continual work in progress. Like, self-awareness isn't just, I did a little questionnaire today and I'm going to be self-aware for the rest of my life. It's every day. And, I talk about hunting your elephant, seeing your elephant, and you see your elephant that you have now, and then you hunt that, you decide what you can do with it, and then it's like, okay, I'm done. And it's like, no, it starts again. Like, that's what continual self-awareness is, and that's what a high performer is excellence on repeat, right? That's what high performance is every day.
Super interesting that because I think I'm very self-aware, but I've never considered it from the external point of view. I think I know myself really well. I know why I'm feeling, or what I'm feeling, but I don't appreciate that projection part, that what other people see. And I've had regular occurrences where people have gone, you don't see this thing about you, and that's really interesting. It's almost like a conflict between that self-awareness is, yes, I know myself, versus that external
and
part.
it's that interaction, right? So it's being aware of your interaction with others, but also your intent behind your interaction. So when you rocked up to see me, you're going to suck your belly in because you're like, she's a health professional, or you're going to let her hang out. These things that we do, that when you're truly self-aware, you're aware of all those things.
Yeah.
But it is hard to do it all yourself. That's why, I work with some of the best athletes in the world, because I literally help them, become as self-aware as possible in order to bring their best performance.
I had in my notes, and I wasn't sure if I was going to sort of get into this, but this podcast journey, right, like 5.5 years in, before that, Shay was not fulfilling his potential. And I could see it, and those around him could see it, but he couldn't. So you are self-aware, but you also aren't.
Yeah.
And there was just such clarity with our sort of group of friends around what you are now is who you could be. And it's kind of like you've walked into it. And when I was reading the book, I was thinking, fuck, this is a lot of these elephants is Shay.
Oh, you got to finish it, buddy.
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking as I'm talking, but I also want to get back to Nadal, and it's not because I want to distract, but the Nadal thing is really interesting because I've watched him play, and he's very idiosyncratic in terms of like his preparation, what he does when he breaks for a point. And I never thought about that in terms of the external message that he's sending to other people as well. It's being up in close quarters with those people. It must be fascinating.
And I always, one of the things that happened in that time was they both like asked my name, and we had name badges, but they asked my name, shook my hand, and then they said hello to me every morning. So they remembered, whereas every other guy in the top 100 was like, oh yeah, there's a check here, whatever. Do you know what I mean? So it was that intent of learning to know my name. They had respect for me because they knew that to be a female physio in that room, you had to have done something special to bring in a female physio. They had to fight for me to be in the program. And I remember one morning, Feds opened the door for me and my boss was like, what? What is Feds doing opening the door for you? And I was like, everything with my intent, my friend.
Yeah, it's such a polished...
Like it's a respect thing.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's another trait I see true high performers respect their peers and respect the greats in whatever they do, and they also want to try and elevate others. And that's the big thing, the difference between greatness and success is the greats actually want that for other people as well, so they will help push and lift other people up, whereas those that are just driven by success, it's all about the bright shiny things for themselves. So the true greats, the true legends of anything that I've met, and this includes the Noahs and the Yohan Blakes, they actually are driven by greatness and success for other people, not just for themselves. And they have a mission and a plan to actually make the world a better place and have impact. And those are the kind of athletes that I want to be around and support for them to do their thing, because then I'm lifting up this whole band of people that they're trying to help as well.
And that's what you're doing with your work.
Yes.
As well.
Yes, exactly.
Rubs off.
Yes, yeah. Surround yourself with like-minded people. It's amazing what you can achieve.
Strong start, Joe. Like I said, this is going to be part of this is your life and part sort of getting that wisdom out. But I actually want to take us back to the start to sort of like understand, how you've turned into the person you are. But grew up in Opotiki. I was wondering how, early childhood and life and family sort of created the person you are and what influences you had.
Grew up on a farm in Opotiki, kind of like 10K out of town. So, and both parents were working on the farm. So it created a need to be really independent really early. Like if you wanted to do anything, go anywhere, you needed to figure out a way yourself. I got known as Man Beast because you'd see me driving riding my bike all around the whole of Opotiki, up and down.
Man Beast?
Man Beast, yeah. It's pretty strong on a bike.
It's a tough nickname for a young girl.
I'd race the school bus home and crazy stuff like that.
So there's a competitive streak to you.
Oh, 100%, 100%. So it was very much I had to be independent and I needed to believe in myself really early on. So there was my parents never made my lunch. They didn't do my washing. You had to get shit done yourself. And I think that actually gave me this really amazing platform to then go and take on the world. Like I always believed I could do anything if I put my mind to it. COVID really stuffed that up because the world shut down and it was totally out of my control. But the rest of the time I've always had this, really strong independent belief that I can make anything happen if I put my mind to it. And I think the other side is growing up in Opotiki, culturally there was quite a large population that was, I guess, lower socioeconomic, and Māori, I've been in Australia too long, but the Māori culture was very much a part of like my upbringing and very much ingrained in part of who I was, whereas other people that grew up in different environments didn't have that. And it's really interesting because now I spend so much of my time away in the US and Jamaica, and just about every athlete I work with is black. And I went to Jamaica first time, and I was working for the Jamaican Olympic Association. Sorry, sidetrack. This is a good story. I'm getting somewhere. And I rocked up late the night before. Kingston's a pretty rough place, and everything's gated, and I wasn't allowed to leave my hotel compound until a driver came and got me, and I couldn't walk outside. And I was like, oh, wow, where am I? And the next morning, a coach that I knew picked me up, took me to this track meet. And track meets in Jamaica, like if you ever get to go to a track meet in Jamaica, it's an amazing experience. It's like going to watching the All Blacks play here in Auckland. It's a pretty amazing thing when the All Blacks are on.
Good.
Disclaimer. But I rocked up to this track meet and there's, quite a few thousand people there, probably 10,000 people. And I'm sitting in the stands and people are looking after me because I'd worked with the Jamaicans at this point. So a lot of people knew me, but I didn't know them. And then this person came up to me and said, "Oh, Dr. Joe, you ready for your TV interview now?" And one, I didn't know I was doing a TV interview, but I was like, okay, whatever. And so I ended up going down the track and I was doing this interview with Shelley Fraser-Price, and I walked back up into the stands afterwards and I sat down and I was like, how did they even know who I was? Like, how did they, I hadn't met these guys before. And I was telling my husband and he's like, babe, how many white redhead chicks were in that stadium of 10,000 people? And I was like, oh. But I don't see myself as any different. And I think my growing up on a portiki made me, there was no difference, black, white, any of that. It was just humans, people. We're all the same, treat everyone the same, treat as you want to be treated, So I think that has actually been a big part in me being able to be successful. One, being independent, two, having that crazy power of belief, and then three, just seeing everyone as equals and, just embracing everyone. And I think it's made me make great friendships and relationships around the world.
I spoke to your sister, Gemma, and I asked her to describe you. And she said, driven, stubborn, and caring. She said you're an amazing inspiration to her kids with everything you're doing and done. And I asked for some sort of stories from childhood, which might help, give a bit of a picture of what you were like. And she recalled you had a swimming pool in your backyard that was 5 meters across. And she said you would do hours of butterfly and freestyle and breaststroke, just going back and forth. And you could literally do 2 butterfly strokes and then you'd have to turn around, but it didn't matter. And then there's also a story about you'd bike 10 kilometers in the dark to swim training at the age of sort of 8 or 9. So I'm wondering, when you reflect back on that, where did you think that drive came from? I've got an 8-year-old; he wouldn't do that. Where is that just internally built?
This is a real interesting one, and I've had conversations with high-level coaches around drive, because I just feel like I was born driven. And my mum jokes that her waters broke months early, and I was preemie and stuff. I just couldn't wait to get out, and I feel like there is a little bit innate in some people that are just extremely driven. I feel like I've always had a mission on the planet, and I can't have kids, and I don't think that's how it's meant to be. I'm meant to make a difference, meant to make an impact, and seeing your elephant, writing this book was definitely a part of that, and having impact with athletes around the world. But yeah, I actually don't have an answer for where the drive came from, but I don't meet many people outside of the world in high performance that have that drive. It's not something that everyone has. I know that. And sometimes why can't you just get out of bed and do it, And for me, there's something to get done. You just get it done. And it's hard. And I do feel sorry for both my sisters growing up, and they're both younger, and I was good at sport, I was good at school, I was liked, and, so they very much suffered in my dust a little bit, having to live up to that standard and expectation. But they just didn't have the same drive that I do. It's just really interesting, even though we had the same influences growing up and things. Yeah, it's powerful.
Well, Portuguese is a million miles away from where you are now. When you are growing up and you've got that drive and you are in a small town, New Zealand, are you dreaming of getting out, of the opportunities that await on the other side of the highway?
100%. I always knew I was going to get out, but it was funny. My parents wanted to send me to boarding school, and I didn't want to go because I wanted to stay with my swim coaches and with my friends and all that type of thing. But I knew once school was done, I was gone. I knew that I was going to go to university. There was no plan ever to stay in a portiki. There was nothing in my big picture planning as a teenager that saw me ever settling there. People ask me now, would I ever come back? There's a few jobs that I'd take if I was offered them, but yeah.
One more observation from your sister, which I think might put a bit of a lid on the sort of childhood years. She said she remembers skiing with you once and you went off on your own in your bright highlighter pink ski pants. And at the end of the day, you're like, oh, my leg's really sore. I better go see a doctor. And you'd broken your leg skiing that day. And how dare they rip off your tear-away pink pants in order to treat you? But she commented that you always push through the pain barrier.
Yeah.
Did you really break your leg?
Yeah. It was only like a small, like a crack, but I did break my leg, and I was at that point, I was maybe 14, something like that. You know, you're pretty invincible, unbreakable, and I was a pretty good skier. And there'd been a bit of snow, so I'd been going off the tracks and like doing jumping off things and stuff. And I do remember, like, I jumped off a pretty big ledge and then landed, and there was obviously a rock underneath, so there wasn't that much room, so I impacted pretty hard. And I had a lot of pain in my leg, and I was basically skiing down on one leg, and I'd been practicing skiing on one leg because I knew you had to do that to become a ski instructor when I was old enough to become a ski instructor in 4 years' time. So I'd been practicing skiing on one leg. So I skied down on one leg, and then I was like, yeah, I think I better go and ski patrol. And I remember they wanted to cut off my pants. I'm like, I'm sure I can take them off myself.
That's where I was going with it, is what were the dreams? So ski instructor was on the horizon?
Look, I just knew the world was waiting for me, and it was a big world, and I wanted to get everything I could out of it. I was just really, I knew I wanted to make a difference. I knew I wanted to do something in sport. I knew I wanted to be the best at whatever I did. And ski instructing was a pathway. So the sell to my dad at the time was, I can travel, work as a ski instructor, and have, different experiences, which is going to, grow me as a human being. So I'm going to be ready for more life things that get hard when I'm finished university. So he took that one and the new pair of skis that I had to get to be able to do the ski instructor course. And I've always got a plan. There's always, and my husband laughs at me because I was like, but we need to have a plan A, B, C, and D, and he just rolls his eyes.
Hey, how far down do you go? How many alternatives have you got?
I'm normally to D, pretty solid. Yeah. For my athletes, I have A to D pretty much. If this doesn't work, we're going to do B, C, da.
It's got a plan. Joe, your story also includes devastating loss, and I've been thinking about how to approach this part. Sometimes we leave it to the end if there's something, but I kind of thought that might inform some of the chat later on if we just address it now. If you're open to it, can you tell us what happened with your sister and perhaps how it sort of impacted or shaped your life?
Yeah. Big deep breaths here. So my sister Amy, she drowned 7 years ago trying to save her kids in Napier. What happened, my mum and my two nieces, my sister, were walking with the dogs. It was like a hot summer's afternoon in January, and they walked past a bit where there's a river and the estuary meets the ocean, and my nieces wanted to get in and go for a swim. It was hot, and my older niece, Ava, she was 9, I think, at the time, and she basically was in knee-deep water, and then you know how the sand kind of gives way and it's muddy, and then she got swept off her feet. And then my niece, who was 5, did the same thing, followed her big sister, and next minute they're both getting taken out to sea and essentially a big rip heading out into the ocean. And my mum went after Ava, who was a bit older and a little bit closer, I think, and Mum had done a little bit of surf lifesaving. I was heavily involved in surf lifesaving in Portuguese, and so she knew not to swim straight up to her and like get her to roll on her back and calm her down and float and kind of bring her in that way. But then my sister went after Juno, the youngest, and I think just the sheer panic of the mother's love seeing their child in trouble and didn't get Juno to roll on her back or anything, and then she panicked, and we'll never know exactly how it happened, but basically she went down and never came back up again. And thankfully there was a triathlete running by. My mum was screaming at this triathlete to help my niece, and managed to save Juno and Ava, but Amy never came up. And I'll never forget flying back. Well, I won't forget the phone call, but my uncle calling me saying, "We've lost Amy." I was like, "What do you mean you've lost her? Where is she?" I was like, "How do you lose a 35-year-old woman?" And he's like, "We've lost her." And I just didn't connect, and then I realised what had happened. But they didn't find her body. So, and this was kind of late evening. And so I booked a flight as soon as I could. So it was the first flight into Auckland the next morning. And I was waiting. I had this 5 hours at Auckland Domestic Airport, and the worst day of my life. And I'm sitting in Auckland Airport and haven't slept, can't sleep. You're just so anxious. You're crumbling on the inside, outside. Your whole world's caving in. Every person who's close to you is an absolute shaking mess. And I was, dreading what I was going to find, seeing my mum and my dad and everything. Anyway, so I'm filling in time, and I'm in the shop in Auckland Airport, and I, going to get, I think it was probably chocolate and a V or something at this point. And there's the New Zealand Herald sitting there, as they are always at the front, and it's like full page photo of the divers looking like treading through looking for her body. And I picked it up and I looked at it and I just started hysterically crying. And the lady behind the counter said, "Oh, you have to buy that now that you've picked it up." And I was like, "That's my sister they're looking for." And this random lady just came over and hugged me, and I dropped the paper. And it was a pretty special moment. It was one of those hugs that you needed. But Amy's passing, and I don't even know whether I should be saying this, and you can cut this out, but I actually dreamt that she drowned 6 weeks before she drowned, exactly how she drowned. So I dreamt what she was wearing, that she was in muddy water, and I dreamt it over and over and over. So the last time I saw her alive was when I dreamt exactly how she drowned. So that's a bit crazy. But it was kind of bizarre. From the moment that I had that dream till the moment she died was pretty much exactly 6 weeks. And I'd been almost sad and somber, like I was grieving for those 6 weeks, and I didn't really connect the dots until it happened. And I had to do a lot of soul searching around that time to figure out what that is. But I actually think it enabled me to almost process the death as it was real when I had that initial dream, so that when she actually passed, I could be the strong one in the family. And it was things like dealing with, the coroner and the media, and, organising the funeral, doing the eulogy, all those things that no one ever wants to do when someone close to them passes. But I actually found this amazing strength, and I think it was because I already, in a way, processed something, even though I didn't know it was real at the time.
So did you sort of delay your grief? Were you strong in the moment and then you sort of processed it later?
Like a true high performer, I had a plan for my grief. Grief, and I'm sure many of your listeners have dealt with grief. It's a crazy beast, and I think it's like an elephant, it's very individual to us, and we need to own our own journey through it. And the big thing is, to face it head on. So I was never in denial, but I made decisions around what I thought was going to be best for me, and out of respect for Amy as well. So at the time I was meant to be going back to work at the Australian Open, actually the day that she passed, or the day after she passed away. And I called my bosses there and said, "Hey, look, this has happened." And I said, "I don't know how I'm going to be, but I might still want to come later on because it's like a 3-week event." And after a week or so of being in New Zealand and being at the funeral and everything, everyone else had to get on with their lives. So I did too, and I made a choice based on what I thought I needed to do for me, and then what Amy would want for me. And I knew that she wouldn't want me to give up on my own dreams. I knew that she'd want me to be better, stronger, and have a message and show her kids this is what, you can achieve in life. So I decided to keep going and went to the Australia Open and carried on. And then I also knew that I needed a vehicle for my grief. And I actually have always been a runner. And Amy and I had been talking about running. Oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of the marathon. It's down by Taupo, and you go the 42 Traverse. So there's the 42 Traverse Marathon. We've been talking about running it together and training for it, and it was in like April or whatever. And I was back after the Australian Open, was back at home, and I was having a bit of a dark moment, and I was like, I've just got to go running. And I literally went to a national park and started running, and it was raining, and I was like, oh, she's here. Like, I felt her with me when I was running. So then that was my thing. So like processing my grief, I would go for a run, and then Amy was essentially there with me. And so we were training for this marathon together, and that was kind of got me through those first couple of months, was really training for that marathon. In my mind, she was with me. And then when it rocked up to the race, it hit me, I was like, holy shit, this is like, what do I do after the race? Like, I've planned my grief process to this point. What's the plan after that? And I taped my wrists for when it got hard, and had a little story that I told myself about her and that she was with me. And this lady came up and asked me, like, what was the matter with my wrist? Was I worried about falling? Because she was worried about her wrist, if that was a thing that we needed to do. And I was like, no, it's about my sister. And she's like, oh, she'll be there on the big hill. And when I got to the big hill, I was like, oh, my God, Amy, where are you? I need you. It's like, I need your angel wings right now. I guess I kind of tackle everything with that high-performance mindset. And, you could argue that's a good or a bad thing. But, I guess her death was just another thing to process and get through. So it definitely changed our family, and I think any major trauma changes any of us, but we have a choice of how it changes us. And I've had a lot of trauma in my life, and every time I've had trauma, I've tried to see is what is the upside, and what can we learn, and how can we be better and support each other and be better humans. And I think, sometimes we see when families go through these kind of things, they fall apart. It's kind of one of the other, right? You get stronger together, you fall apart. And I actually talked with my family about this, and I was like, we've got a choice to make. We can choose to, fight it and let it pull us apart, or we can choose to really stand together and work through it together. And I think we're closer as a family because of it. We do, we have a family group chat, and it's, we let each other know we're home safe, because we've learned that people don't always come home. So it's different, but I don't know. I think Amy's death has made me want to influence the next generation more. And at the same time, I found out I couldn't have kids. It was one of those months of hell. I think it's influenced me in a good way, in a way.
I wanted to ask about that, because it's not in your book. You kind of like reference it in your book, but without going into detail. And I wondered about, because I know you do keynotes and speeches and you're talking about other people's elephants, but is this built into your story now? Like, is it important for you to share this, to help others, or have there been moments when you've sort of addressed it with people?
It's definitely part of my story now, and I think the message that you can go through tough shit and you can come out the other side and be better, I think that's a really important message to get. And in the book I talk about seeing my elephant, and my publishing company made me kind of bring back the story because it was quite personal and quite emotional. But I literally saw my elephant on stage at a speaking conference, and I realised a moment where I'd actually been quite angry with my sister Amy when we were kids, and my parents had actually sent me to a mental institution because they were that worried about me under doctor's guidance or whatever. And I remember, this cold, dark horrible room where they basically just put me in while my parents talked to the doctors outside. And I remember being, that monster in the storybooks and thinking that was who I am. And I told the story on the stage at the speakers conference, and they said, let the emotion come up and go with it. And like this emotion hit me like crazy. Like all of a sudden I was feeling her presence and realized that I'd never got to say sorry to her. And that just hit me like the tidal wave. And I realized that this was my elephant. Like I was literally seeing my elephant on stage in front of everyone. And it just was like suffocating me. Couldn't breathe. And it wasn't like a panic attack, like I was nervous being on stage. It wasn't that at all. It was, wow, I'm dealing with something real. And it took me a couple of hours to shake it. But the only way I could shake it, Bo, was actually facing it head on and dealing with the fact that, yes, I'd been an angry child. Yes, my parents had sent me to this mental institution to try and help me. Yes, I hadn't had a chance to say goodbye to sister, and I've been carrying this fear of being that monster ever since. Like, fear was my elephant, and I'd had it locked away for like 20 years. And then in that moment on stage, being vulnerable and being willing to face what's ever in my way in that moment, that was when my elephant showed up. But in sharing that and having that experience has enabled me to develop the whole concept and encouraging other people to face what's standing between them and their greatness as well, and face their own elephants. And so it's kind of crazy in a way. My sister's passing lent to me really, seeing my elephant and dealing with her stuff has then led me to deliver a message, a global message that I think everyone needs to hear.
Man.
Yeah, we've had some epic passages over 5 years of doing podcasts. I think that's the most captivated I've ever been, but so layered, so deeply personal to you, but so relatable, I think, to me. I can only speak on my behalf here. Thank you, one, for sharing that with us, but two, for being able to conceptualize that idea and put it on paper and share it with other people as well, because I think there'll be people listening that probably struggle and grapple with that stuff by themselves at the moment, and then to now have an avenue where they maybe feel seen or maybe feel heard or feel a space to be able to process their own stuff is that's...
I'm just like, so I'm really passionate about starting the conversation, and with the book Sea Elephant, I think it's a really easy concept and metaphor to people to grasp. And I feel like, there's so much media around mental health and, are you okay and all those types of things. But I think there's a huge percentage of population, I think it comes back to self-awareness, that people kind of think they're okay. Like, I'm not depressed, but I'm not at my greatness and my true potential either. And there's this huge gap in the middle where we can start closing some of those gaps and see people reach their potential more. And that's what drove me to write the book. And it came from a place of seeing a lot of athletes not reaching their potential, having this amazing talent, but having all these elephants, all their BS getting in the way. Excuse me. But also seeing, when I come back to Australia, New Zealand, and some of the cultural differences that we have here, and even, my nieces and nephews, and seeing how the lack of conversation around potential and encouraging people's potential. And I don't know whether we're going to go into tall poppy later, but I'm so happy to stand on a soapbox about this. But, I was talking to my nieces and nephews at Christmas time, and they were all, 7 to 12, 6. Well, the ones I was talking to was 6 to 12, and they love what I do, and they just think that I get paid to go on holiday and go to all these amazing places. And with cool athletes, NBA players, yes, Noah Lyles, yes. But I started talking to them about school and everything, and they're all quite bright kids, and I said, are you getting good grades? And are you in the extension class next year, and all those kind of things. And two of them said independently in their own way that, Auntie, it's not cool to try.
That's been a consistent theme for a lot of years. I remember thinking that when I was
But like
13.
we've got this culture and of telling our kids it's okay to be mediocre. That being mediocre is safer than being great. Like, what are we doing? Like, what does the next generation look like when we're discouraging them from shining their light?
So how do we change that? By talking about...
I think it's having the conversations. I've been talking with the charity here, Etu Tangata, that is and going to help them with some stuff. I think they're making some really good inroads. But the conversations need to be not just in schools and businesses and homes. We need to change the culture around shooting for greatness rather than being okay with tall poppy and making that the norm. The culture needs to change, but it needs to be drip thread across. Like, we can target schools, but that doesn't change what the parents are telling them at home, so it is really a layered approach needs to happen, I think.
The contrast must be particularly sharp for you when you spend so much time in the US and overseas, and then you come back and that smacks you in the face, right? The difference between Australia and New Zealand and how they are in America.
Yeah, I always say that I've been cut down, I've been persecuted, I've been doubted, I've been dismissed, not because I've failed, but because I've succeeded. Like, my darkest and dimmest moments have come from success, not from failure.
That's a wild concept to process.
And it's still like in my chest right now. I can feel it, right? It's palpable. Like, the scars are there from achieving extraordinary things. Like, I've stood on the edge of sporting history globally a number of times, and I have not been celebrated for it in my home country. Well, I don't live in New Zealand full time anymore, but Australia, New Zealand, my success is ignored, and I am ignored and chopped down rather than supported. Whereas, I came back from the Olympics after being a part of Noah's team, winning the gold medal, and a lot of the things that we worked on were definitely a large part of his success. And I got back to Australia, I guess, expecting at least to be acknowledged and high five for doing something pretty cool, and was not even acknowledged for being in the room. I was ignored, my success was ignored. And whereas across the globe, my American, Jamaican, all my European colleagues and friends were celebrating me, within 5 minutes of Noah winning the gold medal, I had these huge lists of people celebrating me, and nothing from, well, not nothing, but comparatively, the people that should have been celebrating it. And I really think it needs to change. It's huge. And you mentioned earlier about being underappreciated. And I think there's a connection between the underappreciated and the tall poppy, and it's, that's balance, that's playing against each other. So when you're getting chopped down anyway, you don't kind of push to be appreciated because you're just going to get chopped down. So it once again encourages us to play small.
Yeah, I wonder how that plays out in a situation like this, where we do want to celebrate all the amazing things that you've done, but knowing that it's a cultural thing here in New Zealand, that there will be people, no doubt, that will watch this and go, oh yeah, whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. So I think it's a long, slow grind of change in the narrative.
I want to fill in these gaps because like we've got a lot still to talk about and celebrate. And I wanted to sort of link up these timelines. So you go to study in Otago and you do physio school and you come out and then you link up with the Tongan team in Wellington and then you do some stuff with a US ski team, I think. And you start to kind of chart your path forward. And I was wondering if you could link us up to, because that 2018 year, it seems like that was Commonwealth Games as well, right? Like where did the sisters passing and the Commonwealth Games link up? And because that was seems like a formative one, connecting with the Jamaican team and the start of the snowboard.
So I worked with Swimming Australia for a number of years, and I'd done swimming, so that was kind of a natural path, and had some pretty high managerial roles within that through to London 2012. And after London, there was a lot of drama and issues with Swimming Australia, and it was definitely my time to step away in 2013. And then I needed a bit of time out at that point, so I started just doing normal person stuff.
Civilian
stuff. Like left a relationship, started a new one, had to work on that, finished my PhD, did a few things. But then I was working a bit with tennis, and that was kind of like working away in the background. It wasn't a full-time commitment. Then I started getting hungry for something again, and the Commonwealth Games were coming around, but I didn't really want to take on a high-pressure role again. I was pretty keen just to take a back seat and chill if possible. So one of my friends was like, well, why don't you just volunteer? And I was like, ooh, volunteer. I don't do that anymore. But I was like, oh, maybe just once because it's the Commonwealth Games. It's in my backyard at the Gold Coast. And so I went through all the BS of going to all these stupid meetings that, if you've done enough games anyway, it wasn't a big deal. But anyway, went through all that. And then I got an email from a lady who I know saying, hey, look, Jo, there was 3,000 people applied for the physio roles, and you've got one, but the top 20 got selected to basically be attached to a team. So the teams can apply to be assigned an Australian physio to be a team member. You wear their uniform, you hang out as part of the team. It's still essentially volunteer. They can choose to pay you something, but I was like, oh, yeah. And I jokingly said, only if I get a cool team. And she's like,
joking, not joking, though, actually.
yeah. But I'm like, actually. Like, don't give me England. No, and she was like, Jo, I can't do that. And I was like, okay. And then they had some system where basically they put out the CVs to the teams and they could kind of bid for you. I don't know exactly how it worked. But anyway, a couple of days later, right around the time, so Amy must have died, so like 27, no, it started 2018. Gosh, I'm getting my timelines wrong. Anyway, Amy had just passed away, and I was literally at the Australian Open after that. So within 2 weeks of her passing, I got an email to say, hey, Jamaica wants you. Do you want to work with Jamaica? And the crazy thing about that was Amy was the dreaded Rasta chick, like her favourite music was obviously Bob Marley. The only place in the world that she wanted to go and visit was Jamaica. So all of a sudden I'm like there with the Jamaican team, and it was quite synchronistic, and there was a kind of spiritual kind of air going on in the background that it was all just meant to be. And and so I rocked up with the Jamaican team, and obviously I'm white, I'm female, I'm an outsider straight away. And I was younger than what they were expecting because they'd seen my CV, and then I turned up. By the way, this is like almost 10 years ago, so I was younger back then. And I rocked up and I was like, oh, wow, this is going to be a tough audience. You know, they're very standoffish and pretty much were like, okay, you're just the water bottle girl in the corner. And I was like, hold your time. Like, and I've learned over the years, and being female, I've definitely had to work harder for my place in every level of high performance sport. Every role I've ever had, I've had to work harder and prove myself. And I was like, this is just another one of those times. Just do you, take every opportunity you get to prove yourself. And the first athlete to walk through the door was Ali Atkinson, and she's a swimmer, and Jamaicans don't have many swimmers. She happened to have been world champion at a time, only black female world champion swimmer, I think still to this day, I'm not sure. But she was like, what do you mean? You know swimming? Like, you know about shoulders, not just hamstrings? So I was like, yeah, man, I got you. And she's like, oh my gosh. And then she started talking to someone else. So then it started this little kind of secret squirrel. There's this white girl in the training room, and
Who knows stuff.
She actually knows stuff, and she doesn't hurt, and she's really good. So then all of a sudden the big burly Jamaican massage therapist will stand there. They're just like, okay, well, you can do all the work if you want. And I'm like, well, I think they want to see me. And then I ended up having to have a waiting list and everything. Really? And then word got out. So then it was like, oh, Yohan Blake wants you to see him in his room. And then it's Elaine Thompson wants you to see him in her room. And then all the superstars were like, they'd never normally see anyone but their own person were wanting to check me out. And so the original plan was I was going to stay in the village. By the end of the games, I had my own driver, and I was literally getting driven around to all the different events for all the athletes that I needed to see. So I went in as this absolute stranger. At the end of 2 weeks, I had a whole new Jamaican family, and the chef de mission stood up at the end of the games meeting, and he just said, oh, when you walked in, I was like, oh, man, like, she's not going to fit in. She's, this is going to be a struggle. And then he's like, you just kept on, like, shining brighter and brighter, and now we all love you and just want to take you home to Jamaica with us. And then that's what happened. I went back to Jamaica with them, basically.
When you win over, like, Yohan Blake, like second fastest man ever, right? Like, is there like a hierarchy? It's like,
like when casually we've thrown that in, like second fastest man like ever.
Should we call? No.
You know what I mean? Like, is it kind of like once you've won over the big dog, then all the rest of them are kind of like respect you more?
There's a little bit of that, but Jamaica's still a prove it as you go. Like, you literally have to keep proving yourself. So every athlete, every coach, I had to prove myself with them. But they're very much built on trust. So you prove yourself, you do good by them, you'll maintain a relationship. It was really weird though. When I met Yohan, I just knew we were going to be friends, and we're still really good friends today. So you get to meet some special people along the way.
And it is along the way. So this is like 17 years into your career, right? 15, 16, 17 years into your career. So,
oh my God, I feel old when you say that.
No, your experience. You got
experience.
So where I was getting is you've collated a lot of experiences where you've probably had similar situations. Stephen mentioned Tongan Sevens as your first experience where you're in that situation. So have you got a toolkit of things when you go into a new environment that you're going to be able to do to win that group over?
I think there's a few things. I'm definitely there's a balance of vulnerability and assertiveness. So you can't be too forceful, but you also need to hold your space. There's definitely an element of being courageous, and just what's in the way is the way, and running straight towards it. There's definitely like that curiosity of like, how can I be better? What difference can I make here? And then the final thing is just always showing up as me. And the biggest thing that I tell young professionals coming through, like, your story is your strength, your uniqueness is your greatness. And you just need to keep shining out as that. If you try and be anyone else at any time, high performers are going to pull that apart. So
there's one story here which I think will help sort of represent kind of some of your skill set and what you do. And it's the 2019 World Champs in Doha. So the 4x100 metre final, and 15 minutes before the race, one of the athletes comes up to you and suggests they've strained their quadricep muscle in the warm-up. Can you take us to this and what happened and how you dealt with it?
Man, you take me to all these moments that like I can feel palpable in my... So the Jamaicans are the 4x1, something they'd kept winning for 20 years. They're very protective of the 4x1. So it was a very high pressure. If the 4x1 women win, it's kind of a sign of the rest of the team. And when this girl came up to me and said, hey, look, I think I've done my quad 1. Normally, this isn't a blanket rule, but it's very rare to do your quad in sprinting. So it's quite often like a pinched nerve rather than actually tearing the muscle. But we had her coach stressing out, the head coach stressing out. We had the TV crews in our face, and we had the other athletes freaking out because this was their chance for the gold medal, but also, is the other girl going to warm up? So there was a whole lot of stakeholders in these few minutes that I had to make some really big decisions. And I knew that I had to really show up quite confident and assertive in my knowledge and what was going to be possible in the amount of time that we had. Like, I had to be really clear, even though in that moment I wasn't clear at all. But there was only going to be a couple of options. So if she had torn a muscle, she was out. If it was a trapped nerve, it was potential we were going to be able to release it, but we had a really short amount of time to do it. So I had a bit of an assessment, and I realised that the normal way we would assess this wasn't going to work because we didn't have enough time. So I was like, okay, the only way I'm going to be able to release this in the amount of time I've got is try something completely new that I've never done before and make something up. So I literally made up a traction manipulation nerve glide technique. So it's like putting 3 things together and mixing it up and hoping it works. But otherwise she wasn't going to be able to run. And the other girl, I said, go and warm her up because I'm not sure whether this is going to work. But anyway, I made up this maneuver. It worked. She stood up and could run. The head coach was like, you sure? And I'm like, I'm sure as I can be in this moment. That's all I can give you. But we've tested her. I believe it's a trapped nerve. If it was a muscle, it wouldn't have responded. She wouldn't be able to do what she can do. And then it was going back to each of the other athletes and making sure that they were comfortable that she was going to run and not the other girl that was warming up, even though she was a superior athlete. So the decision was made, and the coach was still, are you sure? Are you sure? I was like, as sure as I can be in this moment. That's all I can give you. But I didn't want to go into the stadium because I was so nervous that did I stuff up? Is she going to go and sit in the chair and then it's going to come back again? Because it's not 100% this stuff, right? And the whole campaign at World Champs was essentially riding on this one race. And I was going to sit back in the back warm-up track. And I was like, you know what? You got to go in there. Come on, Joe. And I sprinted. My sprint, not their sprint. My sprint round to the stadium, and the girl was a first leg, and she ended up running the fastest split that any Jamaican had run for a first leg split. Unreal. They won the gold medal, and when they did their victory lap, I ran down to the barrier, and the 4 of them came around with all their Jamaican flags and wrapped around me, and we couldn't have done this without you. And that was such a moment that I relished in the fact that I'd taken a risk. I did something that you only could do by, in a way, making up a technique in the moment. I had to back myself, show that confidence. I couldn't at any point show the coaches or any other athletes that I was having to make something up on the spot. So it was really showing up as that balance of vulnerability and assertiveness and being confident in the moment in order to be able to do that. But then to share that moment with those girls was pretty special, especially as, less than 12 months before I'd been that absolute outsider, the white girl that they didn't believe that they'd had landed on their doorstep.
At those super high levels, what are the margins from feeling physically and feeling mentally? Because that's quite a critical space that you're operating in, where you're hands-on, but you're also having to. It's like you talked about Federer and Nadal, having those interactions, making sure that they're right on point, eh?
100%. And at that point, there is no, you're treating the whole human at that point. It's not about, what they're thinking versus what they're feeling, physical, mental. It's the whole thing. And literally, there's certain athletes that will actually perform better when they're feeling a little niggle because it takes the pressure off them mentally.
Right.
And had a moment with Noah in 2022. So 2022. And he had a niggle in his groin before a 60 race, and he just started running 60s, so he'd never really been able to put together a 60 because he had a really poor start. But if he could put together a 60 and then he could put together 100, which meant he was in track to hopefully get that gold medal at the Olympics. So we've been working on a lot of things to try and help us start. And we get to the 60 in Boston. I remember it was negative 32 outside. The whole city was shut down, but we were going to run. And he had this niggle in his groin and he was stressing out a little bit, but I knew he was nervous. So I knew that it wasn't really that he was worried about the groin. The groin wasn't actually the problem. He just needed something to distract him. So I needed to let him know that it wasn't anything I was worried about. So I tested the muscle, made sure there was actually structurally nothing wrong, and rubbed his ego a little bit. But I knew that he was going to execute a really good performance because he had that little distraction. And before he went out, he said something, and he never swears, but it was like this bit of bloody go well, because otherwise...
He didn't say that. He was more forceful, wasn't he?
But it was more like he basically said he was so worried. He's like, I hope this works out because we put in so much work. Otherwise, not your job's on the line, but, like...
Hope it's fucking work, Joe. This been fucking work.
I hope it's worth me paying your money to be here full time for the last few months was pretty much the conversation, right? And he was obviously feeling it. And then he went out, he did a PB, he beat Trevon Brimwell, who's been previous world champion, and all of a sudden people are, oh, Noah Lyles can run a 60. And he'd put the world on notice in that one run. And we both knew if he could run that in the 60, he was going to be competitive in the 100. Like, it's on for this, 100 gold medal in 24. So he comes running over to me, and Ashley, I think at that point, had almost bypassed, girlfriend, family and everything, and gives me hugs. He goes, we're fucking on, keeping your job kind of thing. And he gave me this beautiful hug, and it was cool because his video crew were there, and they captured that on camera, and that's definitely, out of all the moments, that's the moment that was quite a defining moment for our relationship and what we both believed was possible for him. It was cemented, we knew it was possible, but we hadn't seen it happen yet, and that was okay, it's on. And then people on podcasts started talking about it, right? And he's like, people are already talking about it. I know.
I've got lots of Noah Lyles questions. So how did you get connected with him at the start? How did you first link up?
Oh, that's even a more random story. So, So I went from Jamaican Olympic Association beating in Jamaica, Yohan, Blake, all those guys, to then meeting the guy from Jamaican bobsleigh. Ended up working with Jamaican bobsleigh to get them to qualify first.
We're going to go back to that as well. That's a good. Yeah. We're going to get cool runnings too. Stick around, everybody.
Stick around. It's coming. So I happened to be. The rest of the world was locked down, but I happened to be able to be in the States for that. So. And Noah Lyles is coach. He coaches Pure Athletics, which is basically all the best Adidas athletes in the US. Not all, but a lot of top Adidas camp. And he was having some issues with athletes through COVID, lots of injuries. And actually, Yohan, Blake's ex-agent, had been asked by this coach saying, hey, do you know anyone? And he's like, I only know 2 people in the world that can help you. And I was one of them. Yeah. He's like, I can ask her, give her a call, see what she says. And I was actually about to go with Australian Beach Volleyball to help them qualify for the Olympics, and get this random phone call from this American number, answer, and it's this coach, and he's like, so what do you do different? What else do you different? So I'm trying to explain. It was really good conversation because I was trying to explain what I did differently and how I wasn't just a physio and I did biomechanics and all this type of things. But I don't think he even realised what I was saying at the time until we started working together. But he said, look, can we meet? So I was with the bobsleigh, had 1 day off in 3 months, and I committed to making this meeting happen with this coach. And it was a real interesting time. From the moment I had that phone call, I knew I was meant to connect with this coach. I didn't know what I was chasing. It was like going fishing and not knowing what you're going to catch, right? But I took the day, went and saw him, met him, met his athletes, and I'm very much about values aligning. And I just liked the way he ran his camp and who he was and what he stood for. So I was like, okay, I can work with this guy. And he's like, so when can you come back? I was like, really good question, because Australia's still locked down, but I'll see what I can do. And he's like, well, if you can come back by Easter, that's when we start running fast, when we need someone like you. I'm like, okay, cool. And then the world was starting to open up, so I could leave Australia. So I booked to go for 2 weeks to the Noah's camp. And it was a really weird thing because I already knew there was something I had to do there. Didn't know what it was. There was no financial backing. I had a free flight that I could use. I paid for my own accommodation, and I went backing myself to create an opportunity. I didn't even know what the opportunity could be. At this time, Noah Lyles was yes, an athlete, but no one knew who he was. He wasn't the best. He wasn't the fastest man on the planet, nothing like that. And yeah, I just backed myself. And in that time, Noah had been working with someone individually, and then they weren't there, or they were sick or something. And I'd been working with a few of the other athletes, and he had a groin niggle, and he comes over and he says, "Hey, Joe, will you have a look at my groin? I normally have someone, but they're busy, or not here, so can you have a look?" And I was, "Yeah, sure, no worries," and had a look, and I said that it was not coming from his groin, it was coming from his back. And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that makes sense." And he's like, "Oh, you got really good hands." And I'm like, yeah, I do. And I was like, yeah, I'm one of the best in the world at what I do.
Yeah.
And with him there, I knew, and it's with any of the greats, you have one opportunity to show up and stand in your light. And if I'd said, "Oh, yeah, I'm okay," he would have gone, "I don't want okay. I want to be the best in the world. So if you're not the best, I don't want you." So I knew I had that moment with him. And the work I did that day, then he was like, "Oh, can I see you today? Can I see you tomorrow?" And at the end of the 2 weeks, and I always remember this, he's like, "Oh, Joe, when do you go?" And I'm like, "Oh, tomorrow." And he's like, "Oh, we need to have a meeting." And I was like, "Okay." And then we had this meeting, and he sat on like the treatment table, and I was sitting on the chair. So he was sitting above me. And even before he was the fastest man on the planet, he's always had that presence. Like, he oozes greatness. He's just that human. And I was like, oh. But then I realized that he's oozing that, and I ooze that and fight for that. So what can we do together? And he said, "Oh, well, me and my brother have been talking, and we need someone like you, like, to travel with us and work with us and try and help us stop us getting injured." And I'm like, he's like, "My agent will call you." And I was like, okay. And then it started from there. But what started as him thinking that I was going to stop him getting injured become hunting down his weaknesses, hunting down his elephants, and actually closing his performance gap. So he was getting closer and closer to his true potential.
How does he respond to that critique of what he's got? How do you approach that?
So someone like Noah is the kind of guy that you give him a critique and he's like, "What? How do I make it better? Like, give me more feedback. How do we fix that? Like, is there?" And they might deny it to start, but then if you've got any proof at all, they're like, "Okay, show me. How do we fix it? How do we fix it?" And so with him, it actually started with me noticing his left foot weakness, and that he didn't have much of a calf raise, and a calf raise is an indication of a lot of things in strength. And if your foot is deforming when you run, you're losing power to the ground. So it was a huge biomechanical issue, and that was the biggest reason in my mind that his starts were so poor. So if we could get that, we're going to be like halfway there at getting his starts. And I proved this to him in the gym, and I said, "This is normal. This is what I can do. You do the other side and see." And he's like, "What? It's the same, isn't it?" I'm like, "No, man." And then so I measured it. I was like, okay, so this is 6 centimeters. Normal's like double that. And you're almost double that on the other side, but both are pretty average. And he's like, "What, average?" And once again, just like me, he doesn't deal with average. And that was a work in progress from there. And then we just went hunting down all the little pieces of the puzzle for him.
The pieces of the puzzle, are they in a textbook?
No.
So where do they come? Where do the pieces of the puzzle come from?
They come from, like I said before, with the NBA player and looking at their best performance, right? So what does best performance look like for Noah Lyles? What are his strengths? When he's running his best, what does that look like? Then what are the little weaknesses and flaws that are there that we can then put back together again and build up to execute his best performance? And so, and as we mentioned earlier, for me, that isn't just physical, so it's the understanding as well. So a lot of what I did with Noah and a lot of the athletes I work with is getting them to really understand their bodies and how their body and their mind work together to deliver their best performance.
Is that changing technique, or is that stuff in the gym? Like, I'm sort of hunting really for the detail.
Yeah. So it's
not
it's
many
all
people
those...
know this, but Stephen challenged me to start sprinting on one of our other shows recently. So I need to
like a rollerblading start.
No, I said wide start. I said you got to go wide start and then narrow into. sort of coming down.
So
Maybe we can go to a track after this.
Oh my God, that would be a great episode. Great episode. So it's all those things. It's been able to. So for me, having a biomechanics background, I know what good technique looks like. I know what angles he needs to execute. I know how far from his center of mass he needs to be putting his foot down to apply force. I know which muscles he needs to be able to activate in what sequence to be most effective in terms of producing power down the track. I know where he's going to lose power from the track. I know what exercise in the gym that he needs to do to be able to strengthen, but I also know the activation exercises he needs to be able to do before he does that in order to be able to get the most out of his muscles, as well as, if this thing's tight, then that's going to limit the capacity for that muscle to work properly, as well as if he doesn't understand, he's not going to be able to deliver it or trust the process either. So the understanding is really key. And Noah has a big team, and he has, people that work on him physically, people that work on him mentally. He has a chef, there's lots of people working around, but we all have our strengths in order to work together to execute his best performance. And my role was almost a little bit like the glue of like being able to see the bigger picture. So probably the one person in the team that has the skill set that can understand the importance of the mental side and language and what he says to himself and how we talk to him and how to hold space for that best performance in the moment, which we mentioned before. But then from a physical perspective, understanding his own body and being able to have the correct processes in place so that he can, one, train his body properly, but then be able to execute when it counts in the moment. And that's a huge, big process as well.
It's one of the most comprehensive answers I think we've had. Yeah, answer your question, Jay?
I'm just waiting for the notes after this so I can get down the track. And
there's a book. There's a course coming as well.
I don't think any part of sport fascinates me quite so much as the start line of the 100-metre final at the Olympics.
it starts before the start line. It's even the walkout.
Well, that whole part. I'm wondering what part of that process you're involved. Like Noah comes out and he's flying and he's jumping around and it looks like he's exerting all this energy. And then it's mind games, you're sort of like lined up against the other fastest men in the world. And it's all part of it, right? Like this is all playing into who's going to win by that fraction of a second. But what are you involved in that part of?
Not so much. So he has another person that works with him and does like a mental plan for the race. So I don't necessarily do the mental plan of what he's actually planning to execute from a mental side of things. My role's more getting him ready physically in the right energy and the right activation process to be able to come out and feel like he can jump as high as he wants, run as fast as he wants, and knows and trusts the process to be able to execute. So a lot of my job is done way before he gets to the start line. It's in that process. And a lot of it, and it sounds corny, but a lot of it is trusting your body and what you're capable of, because you've ticked all the boxes that you just believe you can execute your best performance, and the power of belief is huge.
Who's the last voice that he hears before he goes? Is it you or is it somebody else before he goes out?
He goes, normally it would be his coach. He'll normally walk him like down the corridor, but he would normally, when I was there with him, spend like most of his time like around me and my table. And I see this quite often with athletes that sometimes, and this isn't necessarily Noah, but sometimes their coach can like stress them out a little bit pre-race. So I'm kind of like that calming influence, and I have always talked about holding space for people's best performance, and it's almost a gift that I've developed over time, and the Jamaicans called me out on it in a good way. Like they just recognised it, right? That a lot of their top athletes wanted to spend time with me just before they go and race. And I think that comes a lot from belief and actually believing that they can execute their best performance on that day. And a lot of people kind of overcrowd athletes and can't read their body language, or whether they need to be, lit up or pulled back down again. And Noah and I had a process that was very much nothing even needs to be said. It was just like a look in the eye, and it's like a tap on the shoulder, 4 deep breaths or whatever, So it was just being so in tune with each other and what he needed at the time to try and execute his best performance is pretty cool.
Do you remember clearly that 30-second or minute wait or whatever it was after he's finished and needs the photo finished to decide like who's got the Olympic gold?
At that point, I was quite emotional in myself, and I was kind of like pacing around, kind of not like it, quite like a euphoric but surreal and like, holy crap, did we almost come that close but didn't? And I remember my husband saying to me, "I'm bloody hope that he got across the line, because otherwise that last 3 years was a lot for a second." And because obviously,
Those margins are wild.
The margins are wild, and I'm happy to take a little bit of credit for the lean, because we did identify early in the season that was going to be a thing, and we actually had drills in his warm up to help with the lean. And we just didn't realise it was actually going to be that important. Yeah, but I think for me, what people don't realise behind all these great achievements is a whole lot of sacrifice. And, I mentioned before about, the scars are there from me being, chopped down and persecuted a little bit for being successful. And, I gave up pretty much 3 years to try and help Noah achieve that 100-metre relay. Like, I lost friends, almost lost, a business, almost lost my marriage in order to like be that committed to that goal. And it takes a special kind of human to be that committed to someone else's best performance. And I'm very glad that came together on the line.
Was it worth it?
Yeah, it's a really hard one, because I don't know if I hadn't have committed to Noah, who would have I committed to? Would have been LeBron. I don't know. There's and if I did commit to LeBron, I could never tell you, because I'd always have an NDA. But anyway,
have you been working with LeBron?
Can't name names. Yeah. It's hard to know. It's sliding doors moments, right? I think I would have, if it hadn't been Noah, it would have been someone else. But if you're going to back a horse, I'm glad I backed one that I knew had the capacity to win.
Knowing what you know now, would you do it again?
I would do it again. I would just put different structure in place for my own self. When you're spending 6-8 weeks at a time away from friends and family and going home for a week or 3 days to recoup and recheck your visa and go back again, there's not much time for filling your cup up. And in the lead into Paris, I knew that I couldn't keep doing what I was doing at the level I was doing it for one person without having a break, without resetting. And my husband and I had a few days in Santorini before the Olympics, and I was like, I could just stay here.
What's your relationship with Noah now? Is it on? Are you still working with him?
So probably not in the foreseeable future. He needs someone full time. He needs someone that can be there full time, and I can't commit to that. And post-Olympics, that decision was made both for him and for me. And I do think that my best work has been done with him. So we've made my biggest difference to make with him, and I can go and make a bigger difference for other people and get them to that Olympic final.
So now can we rewind to Cool Runnings 2.0?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, this is such a cool...
Feel the rhythm, feel the ride. Get on off this bobsled time.
How many times had you watched that movie before you got involved with the second iteration of this dream?
I definitely watched it a few times. It definitely was, a fan favourite. And it was quite funny because when I got asked whether I'd help them qualify for 2022 when they hadn't done it for 24 years and they needed me to do it, I was like, how long have you been trying for? 33 years. And I'm like, so it's like a real thing. It was like, yeah, man. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Do you have a Jamaican accent in your locker?
Nearly went there.
Well, it's questionable. We do accents a lot on this show.
We're not sure if they're allowed or not. They can be problematic.
Let's leave it
I don't want to offend anyone.
No. Everything is airy.
Okay, anyway. You're allowed.
But it's like an email comes in, a dream is sold to you.
So literally it was in person. So I was in Jamaica anyway for the Jamaican Olympic Association, and they organised a dinner of all the members of the association, and one of them was Sir Nelson Christian Stokes, the original member of the team, one of the brothers, and still the president of the association, and the push behind keeping that dream alive for Cool Runnings too. And he's like, "Joel, man, I hear you're great, blah, blah, blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, man." And talking about, he's like, "I'm a bit mashed up." And I was like, and he's like, "Do you think you can help?" And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess so, you know." So he's like, "Oh, we'll meet at the association the next day." And so I have a look at his body and everything. We start talking about it. And he's like, "And by the way, would you be available?"
Amazing.
And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like, it's a chance to be a part of history, right? And like, what a cool story. But we just didn't know COVID was going to happen. So literally when COVID hit Australia and New Zealand, I was booked to go on a flight to meet the Jamaican bobsled team like the next day in the US and Canada for like that season, end of that season. But obviously we couldn't go. So everything was basically, I was trying to do screening examinations and watch gym programs and stuff online. And then we ended up finally getting, still in COVID, so Australia was still locked down, but I managed to get an exemption to leave Australia to go and work with the Jamaican bobsled team.
One of the great exemptions.
I was like, I'm sure they got the exemption, and they were just like, "Yeah, whatever. Good pitch. You can take that one, whether it's bullshit or not." But yeah, and we like literally rocked up in Whistler in Canada, which I was familiar with. I've done some ski seasons there, and we were like all relative strangers, right? Like, there was a couple of guys that had flown in from the UK, a couple of guys from Jamaica, there was me from Australia, and we're just random strangers trying to, like, we've got 3 months, 10 races to try and qualify for the Olympics and make this thing that no one could do for 24 years happen. And we're on the shoestring budget and literally had no idea if the funding was going to come through that we're expecting. But I was all in, you know. I was just like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, everyone else is locked in Australia. I'm at least trying to be Cool Runnings too. This is pretty cool. Yeah, and such a special, I feel like it's a story that everyone connects with, right? It's the story of hope. Like, it's more than sport. It's about hope. Like, if Jamaica can have a bobsled team, what else is possible? And I think we just took on that mantra on our whole journey to try and qualify, and it was a very special ride.
Yeah, that's such a cool part of the story.
There's obviously some natural challenges to Jamaica qualifying for a Winter Olympics, as we've established, as history has established. So you set up camp in the States.
Yeah.
You mentioned there's 10 races. How much work can you put in that short space of time to get them across the line?
Yeah, it was... Look, there wasn't a lot of time for a lot of extra work. So the pilot was based out of the UK and had done some racing in Europe, like in seasons before for the RAF. So he's the most important person to have some experience. But there is also an element of the whole team working together, both from a physical sense and a mental sense. So essentially bobsleigh is controlled chaos. There's... To explain it, there's like, when you get real with what it is, there's 4 huge, big, the most muscly dudes you've ever met in like a full like skin suit, sprinting on ice, then jumping into a steel can with a pointy nose. There's 3 guys hanging on for dear life and 1 guy that's steering this thing, and it's literally 2 little wires like this, like moving their hands back and forward, trying to keep them on their rails, right? And the first track was Whistler's fastest track in the world. So that kind of makes you a bit nervous to start with, right? Like, these dudes don't know each other. They've got to trust each other. They've got to jump in the sled at the right time. One dude's scared or whatever that's going to F it up for everyone.
One's got an egg in his pants.
Probably.
Come on, guys.
I think they actually did have an egg now that you say it. I think they did. They were the guy in the back had the egg.
Or was it in his hat?
And like they're going at 140 k's an hour, 3 to 5 Gs. Like it's pretty crazy.
Have you been inside? Do you have to like physically experience it to be able to then make the suggestions to change it? Because like you can sprint and go, oh, you do this, this, and this. But when you're on a steel tube hurtling down a track, do you have to have experienced it?
The steel tube thing, and once you're in the sled, it's more about being in sync than it is about necessarily having to experience it. So back to the movie, the bathtub thing isn't like exact, obviously, because there's no G-forces, but that how you fit together in the sled and all that's really important, and the distribution of weight, so how you lean into what corners, all those types of things. But it's track by track. So each track obviously has different corners and pulls different weight, and every track has the corners that we know there's a chance of crashing. And the Whistler track, being the fastest one in the world, made me nervous, one, because they were relatively inexperienced, but like people do die in the sport, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, this will really not rock my career if one of these dudes.
Not look good on the CV.
And so there was 10 races, 8 needed to count. So if you have more than 2 crashes, that's your Olympic dream over. So crashing was obviously something you always want to avoid from a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint, but then like it kills the dream. My job was always to stand at the bottom of the chute and wait for them to finish. And you can always kind of hear a little bit of a sound of them sliding on ice, but it's kind of like calm sound. But when they crash, it's more like like really airy, like.
So you can hear that coming.
You can hear it, and so you can see in the video screen them flashing past certain corners. So there was, say corner 15 and 11 were the ones where people crash. You're like, oh my God. And then I heard that sound, and that was our guys. And there's the sound of, it's different when you're hearing the metal scraping on the ice, right? It's like this deeper, sharper area sound. But then when you realise it's not just the metal, it's their helmets, their heads and their shoulders that are dragging on the ice upside down. Like, how scary. You're going 140 k an hour, next minute so you're flipped on your head and dragging upside down on ice. And the first crash, I remember running down to the finish chute, and the medical team, so every track has to have a medical team, and they're running up as well. And my brain is just like going faster, like, oh my God, are they alive? Oh my God, what if someone says, like all these things. And it was this, and it's not just one person, there's 4 of them. And the reality that people die in the sport was just like, and so we hooked the sled, and as we pull them to a stop, there was movement, so I was like, okay, there's movement, they're alive. Woo! And I hadn't experienced it before, so I didn't know what to expect. And they kind of get out one by one, and they're a bit bruised and bashed. But the medical team cleared them, so there's no concussions, no broken bones. But the thing about that kind of crash is it just doesn't hurt bodies, it hurts minds. And the choice wasn't would they go again or could they go again, it was would they, from a mental standpoint. And my job was to make sure that they were mentally and physically ready to go again. And that moment we had to call it like fear was there, like the fear elephant. And one of them was scared and didn't want to go again. That was going to impact their capacity to actually go again and do it safely. And so I had to call it out. We had to talk about it. And the decision was made to recognise the fear. They were all scared, but they all wanted to go again. But if we hadn't talked about it, I don't know how they would have worked out. And I don't know they would have made it to the Olympics. And that's what I do.
Wow, that is amazing. I was just when you were talking about that at the start, I was thinking like if bobsledding didn't exist and someone was coming up with the concept, like crazy, right? Like
it's so crazy.
Like, all the things you described.
Until
this
you
is the
stand at the top of the chute and I used to do a bit of ski racing and like I'm pretty cool with high adventure sports and stuff, but standing at the top of the chute is scary enough. Just standing there and thinking they're going to sprint and all get in together. It's crazy. And the other thing with that is by the end, so they crashed. There was a bit of damage to the sled, damage to them, bruised everything. And they went again the next day. They had to race again. But before we go back each night, you have to do the runners. So you have to sharpen them up and everything for the next day, and noticed that there was a little hole in the sled. And the guy who sits in the back, the biggest, tallest guy, I was like, dude, there's hardly enough room for my ass there it is, as it is. And now there's a hole. So we're literally fixing a hole in the sled to go again. And this thing is just like out of the original movie, it's unpainted at this point. It's grey with all the fiberglass welding, where there's spots and stuff. And then on that last day, there's a little gate that locks them all in, and it didn't work. So I gave them my hair tie to tie it back on again. That was just what we were dealing with.
Kiwi ingenuity.
And then we got onto the next track, and then we ran out of money. We had no money. We didn't have money for gas or anything. The funding hadn't come through, and so we literally were having to get lifts up the hill with other people, and then we were using our own money to pay for gas to get up the hill and things like that. So it was very much like the original team operating on the belief and the story and the mission more than any other commodity or funding.
I've been trying as we're going to keep a list of the sports that you've worked in, and so far I've got bobsleigh, swimming, beach volleyball, athletics, rugby sevens, and skiing.
There's 19, I think, and count, but it hurts my brain thinking about it.
But that's, I guess, how much is it transferable? Is everything very, very unique?
So when you work with enough sports, there is a certain foundation that kind of forms the base of performance in all sport. And from my perspective, it's really, there's 4 pillars of performance that I talk about, and they're different in every sport, but there's the purpose and perception, so getting your head right, so getting your mind in terms of knowing your why, understanding your why, having your values, your goals, your purpose, all that stuff checked in, locked in, understood, but always developing. And then the second is having planning and processes. So really understanding what the plan is, what are the commodities, the resources that you need in order to execute your best performance. The third is patterns and practice, so how you actually execute and show up to deliver your performance. And the fourth is people and power, so who are the people that you choose to let into your world, let influence you, have an impact on your performance. And when you really check into all those buckets, so when it comes to, say, planning and processes, it might be understanding your biomechanics, it might be making sure the weight of your sled is right, it might be being strong enough to execute a single leg calf raise the whole way through. So depending on what it is, but with most teams or athletes I work with, I go through and check out all those 4 pillars and make sure we got all that covered. So it's the same basis and structure to deliver performance, whatever it is.
I want to bring in the voice of your friend Joey Hayes to help kind of illustrate this point. So he owns the gym that you're operating out of in Australia.
Is that right?
Yeah. He says, what makes her unique in the high performance field is how she assesses athletes and how she can design a world-class program for them. An example is we've got a 400-meter hurdle state champion, and she was weak in her hip extension when she had her arms extended in the hurdle position. Joe's like, let's do a single leg clean with a pause, stepping up to a bench and holding that position there. Also, let's do a jammer press with her using a bench press type movement with her on her feet. And I'm like, oh my God, look at the triple extension to the ankle, knee and the hip, and then all that strength and stability going in end range and the hip extension, which is what she needs going over the hurdle. That might not mean much to the general population, but for someone that's been doing it for 25 years like I have, those 5 or so 1%ers can be the difference between winning a gold medal and coming last. Joe's got this unique ability to be able to get what we're doing in the gym, make it more specific and targeted and individualized to the athlete to get it to transfer into their performance on the field or on the court or on the track where it counts. That's what makes her unique. And that's something I've never seen anyone else be able to do. We all know how to squat, deadlift, bench press, step up, lunge, etc. But those unique tweaks on the exercises are exactly what the athlete needs, which is hindering their performance. And here's a unique perspective. I've got a session with her at 3:30 today. After my 6 shoulder reconstructions and stage 5 arthritis, I'm the strongest and leanest I've ever been at 42 years of age. It's because of Joe's work in the last 3 months. True story. Those tweaks, right? That's like what we've spoken about. It's that mix of intuition and experience just accumulated over the years.
And it's definitely being able to see that bigger picture, right? So, for instance, he was talking about the 400-meter hurdler. So I go to the track and watch her run and see how she actually does her sport. I see her in the gym. I see how she executes every single movement and what position, what she's focused on, what is the intent. So many athletes are given exercises to do that can strengthen them, but they don't know why. So I'm really about the athlete understanding the intent of the exercise, so they're going to actually drive more neural input to that area, so they're actually going to get the most out of everything they do. It's not about training harder, it's about training smarter, right? And I think that's what I really can do, but it's because I have that bigger picture, but also understanding the athlete's capacity to understand, know the why and buy into it. And you can only do that if you understand how the athlete functions on a mental level as well, and really getting to know them as athletes. So do they need more nurturing? Do they need their ass kicked more? Like, what is it they need as an athlete? How do they need it framed, and how do they learn? And a lot of people don't even think about how an athlete learns, but are they more kinesthetic? Do I need to put my hand on them? Do they need to think about it? Do they need to write down a process? What is it they need to learn to be able to do what was required of them, and then being able to, when it counts, execute without thinking about it? Because essentially to execute and perform at the highest level, we can't be thinking, we need to be just doing.
I know you can't talk about like who the clients you're dealing with, but I know that you have recently been working with NBA players. Like, what does that look like? Do they, through word of mouth and other sports, are they like, oh, you need to see Joe? And then do they get you to come over, or are you doing it through remote work?
A bit of mix. Essentially, the elite talk. So one scenario was Noah was at the French Open. We were in Paris for a race. At the French Open, Adidas had like a tent. They had a thing. There was one of the French NBA guys was there. They started talking, and then Noel's like, okay, I met this guy today and I don't like sharing you, but this guy really needs you. And, then he become a client, and then then I went and worked with him in the NBA, and then some other guys on his team were like, hey, do you think Joe will have a look at this? And then their agent gets my name, and then they're like, oh, can you come to New York? And then so it just becomes, you're almost on this little black book of...
It's a pretty good black book to get into.
It's a pretty cool
NBA black book.
little black book. So some of the time it's just advice. So they just need someone to go, hey, like, we need a second opinion. What do you think? Someone completely removed. Sometimes I'll get flown in to, have impact, like I talked about earlier, in a short amount of time. And some of it is like writing programs and changing things over time. And some of it is just on a Zoom call because it's a mental side of things. So it's a real big mix. It's not consistent every time. And, there's a guy, I can't name names, but very much at the very pointy end at the moment, that his performance manager for the team has got me waiting in the wings. He's like, just be ready, because at some point he's going to realise that this person isn't working and we need to get you in. And I've already been pre-approved to go in, but...
Pass on our regards to LeBron when you get over there.
It's literally like, I have people texting me now like, hey, Joe, the Lakers really need you. Can you just like go and just like go to a game and tell them that you're there? So... And, there's different opportunities in different sports. So I was on a show in Jamaica on TV a little while ago, and there was a guy wrote in from Chelsea saying, can you come to Chelsea? So, it's just you don't never know where the next opportunity is going to come from.
Do you have a dream job? Like, do you yearn for, you're traveling around all the time. Like, would a high profile job where you're regularly dealing with elite players and you're based somewhere, would that appeal to you?
Definitely, yes. I think I've got, since the Olympics, I've come back down under and looking for the right fit where my skills will be acknowledged and recognised, and where my cup's going to get filled by working at my highest level, and trying to find where that lines up at the moment. I have been shortlisted for a few like head of performance roles in things like the NBA in recent times. The right fit hasn't come about yet. I definitely, the head of performance kind of role where I get to use all my skills and have that bird's eye view of performance and be able to impact the performance of a number of high-level athletes at one time would be a really amazing opportunity if that came along and worked out. Look, I always joke in New Zealand, if the All Blacks needed a head of performance, I'd think about it, or maybe High Performance New Zealand. But I just, rolling with the punches right now and, working with the athletes that I'm still currently working with and still trying to make my biggest difference wherever I go. And obviously the book and, being on podcasts like this is another, way I can make that impact and, really making sure I'm doing all I can to impact performance for everyone I can possible.
I feel like you're going to get a few calls from New Zealand after this one.
Do you still deal with everyday Joes and Jills?
Only if I like them.
Okay. So
yeah, I don't do it. There's like a no dickhead policy.
We're out.
Your sprint start in my hips.
Bug. Yeah, no dickhead policy, and I'm pretty strict on who I do deal with. So I'm pretty, you've got to do the work, you've got to show up. Yeah.
Getting to the home straight, we had a bit of email back and forth, and I asked if there were any messages that you wanted to get out of it. And there were two lines which I really loved, and I want you to get to sort of speak to both of them. The first one is, possible is anything if you believe.
Yeah, I think my power of belief, always believing in myself and I can achieve anything, started from a really young age. And I see quite often that the lack of belief in one's ability is what holds them back from really challenging themselves to go that next level. And one thing I wanted to talk about if I got the opportunity is never underestimate the power of your belief in someone else to take them next level. So a really random story and a very low-level story, but made an impact on my life. So when I was 13 or 14 in Portuguese, I'd been doing quite a bit of swimming and then started doing surf lifesaving, and we had this four-place team. So it's 4 girls and someone swims out and someone reels them in, and it's a race and you get marks on points and stuff. So 4 of us have been practicing this event to go to nationals, but the club couldn't afford to send 4 of us. So they saw my potential as an athlete and as a swimmer and as someone that could make a difference in the club, and chose to take me rather than take the whole team. So someone else other than my parents believed in me, saw my greatness, and were willing to support it. And that belief that they had in me changed how I thought about myself immensely. And I think we underestimate how our belief in someone else can impact their whole trajectory of their life. So I'm really focused on really showing people that I believe in them. And I talk about a lot in my book about the power of belief. And I just get so frustrated when I see people surrounding themselves with the wrong people. So if you have a coach or a friend or a parent, colleague that doesn't see and believe in your best performance, you don't want them around. And sometimes it takes a lot to take a really hard look at the people around you because those people that you surround yourself with, and I know lots of people say this, the Tony Robbins and everything, but, we are the product of the 5 people that we surround ourselves with. So if you're surrounding yourself with people that don't believe you can make it to the Olympics and that's what you want to do, they aren't your people. And I think that's what I'm trying to do now, is surround myself with people that see and believe in my best performance like I do for everyone else. And if I didn't believe that Noah could win the 100 at the Olympics, he wouldn't have had me around.
We often get asked what lessons we've learned over the sort of podcast journey, and that one is always the top for me. Is that you're the product of the 5 people you surround yourselves with. That's just man, I believe that so fully. Okay, and the other one is, what is in the way is the way. Yeah,
this one's huge, and I say this every day a lot. So the thing, and this is essentially the theme of the book, See Your Elephant, right? The thing, we talk about the elephant in the room. I believe we all have elephants. It is the thing that we're choosing to ignore, push away, not deal with, even though it's big and huge. That thing, that elephant, that BS, that blind spot, that's what stands between you and your greatness. So the moment you can actually face that, you can fix it and fly. So don't run from the things that you're avoiding. So it's the classic, it's a conversation you don't want to have. It's the gym program that you don't want to do. It is, the email you don't want to send. It's the taxes you don't want to do. That shit, that BS, that's the stuff that once you deal with that, 1, it gives you that clean slate, but 2, it's helping you grow to take you to that next level. So what's in the way is the way. Run towards it, not away from it. And all the greats, and I call them seekers in my book, they run towards greatness and they run towards what's in the way.
That book is available now, right?
Yes. It's in paper plus and Wickles even.
There you go.
It's so good. Yeah, seriously, read it. It's I can't recommend it highly enough. It's everything we've themes of what we've spoken about, but just elaborated on. Yeah, go and get it.
I think it's incredible that you're able to illustrate the book with those real life examples as well, like bring it to life with the people that you've worked with. I know some have kept their anonymity, but to be able to name and keep some people in there as well just adds an extra dimension to it.
Yeah. And I wanted to make the book something that everyone could relate to. So essentially it takes you on a journey. So it's the journey to see your elephant, decide what to do with it, and then define the learning that you need to get in order to realize your own potential and your own greatness. And the journey and the process is going to be different for every person, and different people are going to get different things out of it. So the 2 of you will read it and you'll get completely different things out of it, but that's how it's designed. It's not the same experience. It is an experience.
And it's not just high performance athletes, right?
No. It's for everyone. Like your greatness, your best version of yourself, that's the thing I'm hunting for you. But you've got to choose it. And that's the biggest thing that people don't realize. High performance is a series of choices. And I've made thousands and thousands of choices in the direction of my best performance when others might have stepped away, played victim, played safe. I just kept stepping into it. And that's the result is the career that I've had.
What's next?
A really good question. I'm trying to. It's a day-by-day process. I think there's probably something in the US will happen sometime in the next few years, but in that high-performance realm. But we'll see. I'm consulting for a few different teams and things at the moment, so just see what lands. Really.
Your husband was talking about the box, right? Do you have to build your own box? Is that the reality of you and what you do?
The box is a perception. It's like judgment, it's a perception.
I'm going to close with some words from your sister Gemma. She says, I don't think she realizes how good she's doing or how many people look up to her. My 11-year-old has now so-called career choices, and he says, I want to be like Auntie Jo. I want to do what she's doing. And it's not because she travels the world or works with these amazing people and stuff. It's because she's changing people's lives. It's been such a cool episode. like there's been so much depth to it. You know, it's one of those ones for Shay and I, we just sort of sit back and listen because it's one you would want to re-listen to because what you're saying holds so much weight. But thank you so much for coming over and spending this time with us and sharing your story. And it's been a journey.
I think one of the amazing things is, you know, all this, the people that we all spoke to were like, we just can't wait to see you guys shine a spotlight on Jo and what she does. And it's easy to get hyped up for an episode before you even met somebody. But then when they deliver over and above what you've expected, it's a pretty awesome experience. And then to know that you've got the compendium to go away with and digest it even more. So, I guess this is just a chapter in the story of Jo that's got plenty more things to come. So congratulations on your success so far and can't wait to see where you land.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the opportunity to be here with you guys. I'm getting a bit emotional right now because I have spent a lot of time away from New Zealand, chasing greatness, chasing my dreams. It doesn't mean that New Zealand is not where I call home. It's still a part of me. It always will. Every time I, first see the land when you're coming over the Tasman, it's like there's something happens inside. And it's really fun in post-Olympics and having this, amazing experience with Noah and, being at the very, very tip of high performance globally, like the fastest man on the planet. Like everyone can run. That's the thing I love about athletics. Everyone can run. So to be the best on the whole planet at running, it's pretty effing cool, right? So to be a part of that, and then I've kind of come back, and I don't know whether it's age or whatever, but I really want to have an impact here in New Zealand wherever I can. And it's like a giving back scenario, and it's like calling me to do that. So to have the opportunity to chat with you guys and hopefully have some impact here in New Zealand and continue to do so. So thank you so much for having me, because I think this is a really nice vehicle for me to really impact people here in New Zealand. Share my story.
Cheers, Jo.